Hey everybody, welcome back to the Shoe and Show. Thanks for joining us this week as we launch into 2025, the great unknown. Some might say the abyss. I don't think it's the abyss, Matt. It's the same stuff.
That movie is scary. Abysses are scary.
Yeah, it's just an accelerated world that we're living in. The artificial age in some ways. Good news, we work on a physical product, which presents its own challenges. And those physical products are increasingly being scrutinized around sustainability, traceability, and also new opportunities are presenting themselves for production in different places outside of China, which increasingly in that abyss is increasingly important to start to look at. And so I know we've got someone today who is a shoe dog through and through, and I'm excited to hit this conversation hard.
Yeah, me too, man. So today we have on the program Neeraj Narayan, who is a shoe dog, as you mentioned, Andy, but has been in the industry for a long time. His journey is really cool. Neeraj, welcome to Shoe and Show. First and foremost, talk to us about kind of your current role and position, and then let's dive into your shoe story. How did you get to where you are now as it sits here in the footwear industry in 2025?
Thank you so much for having me, Matt and Andy. It is always a pleasure to talk to you. It's such a joy to interact and talk to you, both of you, always. So currently I lead two companies. One is Synergy India Ventures, which helps brands to establish supply chain in India. And the second company is SIV Impact. SIV Impact is a global professional sustainability services company. And we provide wide-ranging services when it comes to sustainability, and very focused at small and medium-sized companies. And my story is very interesting. I'm a civil engineer by education, and decided not to pursue that career. And I always had love for shoes. So I did study design, school design. I went to school design and did designing and product creation. Joined a very large manufacturing company called Bata, which is a large, company,
well.
especially in India. So I worked with there for 7 years. Then I left the company and joined a company called Yonex, a performance-based company. They do a lot of tennis, golf, and badminton based in Indonesia, and the company is based in Japan. So I was, after 2 years of that, I actually joined, I don't know, this is a very interesting fact. I actually gave birth to Starberry. I don't know how many of you remember Starberry.
I do remember. Is that Stefan Marbury's shoe?
Yes.
So, Starberry, of course.
I gave birth to that idea. Then I also was the instrumental in giving birth to 11, which is Venus Williams' brand at some point. And then there was a brand called Bitten by Sarah Jessica Parker, her footwear line. So I gave birth to all these celebrity brands in 2006 through 2008.
You are a shoe dog, my goodness.
And brought the whole idea of having the Starberry, of helping kids in project to have accessible, high-performance shoes was key. And that is what drove me to make that happen and make that possible. So I did that, and then suddenly the company went bust in 2008. I was without a job for a year, and then then I get a message on LinkedIn from Nike saying that in December 2008 that we have a role in India helping establish their global supply chain in India. So I accepted that role, and it was the same time when Nike were letting go people here in WHQ. They were undergoing through difficult times, and they were laying off people, but they hired me at that time for India, and that's how I started working on Nike on 1st of June 2009. And it has been an incredible journey with Nike. I helped establish India for them, led sustainability for them in Asia. And I led sustainability for Nike at a very difficult time for them, when there were a lot of accusation on child labor, lack of freedom of association, factories were non-compliant. It was a tremendous time that time, and I had to turn around that, stabilize the whole supply chain for them, and make it more compliant. And then I moved to WHQ here in Portland in 2016. and I led modernization for factories and footwear manufacturing. And then my last role was global sourcing director for Jordan brand. And then I left the company in January 23 to found these two companies, Synergy India Ventures and also SIV Impact, with my partner Arul, who is based in India, and we work together on both the companies. Incredible journey so far.
That is a journey. I will say, no shade to Mr. Marbury, but you upgraded going from Starberry to Jordan. I just saying, it may be obvious, but I'm just putting it out there.
Incredible.
So from there, Andy, I thought you had a question on your end.
Well, I just think there's so much to unpack around his background, but I think maybe where we start with is India, because I think with the way, and it's not just the increased tariffs on China or the environment that we live in today around higher cost, and it's everything. It's a holistic look at people's sourcing and supply chains at this point. People have in the past dipped their toes in India, and some people still source there. Some people, didn't find exactly what they wanted. Maybe they pulled out, and so everybody has an opinion.
Yeah.
Tell me what the modern opinion should be about India and what you guys are doing in particular, because I know with your work with Nike, it's more athletic, right? And I know traditionally India's been more brown shoes. So tell me what, if I'm approaching you and I say, oh, we've done India before and it didn't work out, tell me why I need to re-look at India.
Absolutely. I think if you see last few years, I would say last 4 to 5 years, there has been massive investment in India, first on infrastructure, then the trade policies. There's an investment in having trade agreements with EU. You will see by end of this year, we will have a free trade agreement with the EU, and it is now accelerated because of the geopolitical situation right now. So India presents itself a very compelling sourcing country for especially for footwear. And I will give 4 reasons why you should reconsider or maybe consider India. First is talent. There is a tremendous amount of talent in India when it comes to if you want to hire an engineer. It takes a month or 2 months to hire in Indonesia and Vietnam even more. But in India, you can hire the first day a good quality world-class engineer. And you don't need a shoe dog or a shoe trained person to operate in India. You need to hire a good engineer, train them, and invest in them, and they will run the factory. And so I would say talent, skill, trade agreement, infrastructure. The infrastructure is totally different what people have experienced in the past. You have world-class highways, ports. I think these are the reasons why we should consider, again, India as a sourcing base. And I think I would say Feng Tai operates in India. They faced tremendous problem when they moved to India in 2008 or 7. And it was, they moved at a time when there was nothing there. But they invested so much in terms of, training workforce, hiring good talent, local talent, investing in local talent. Today, they contribute to roughly around 5% of Nike's production, which is around 40 million pairs. And it's a world-class operation. I would say Nike's best operation operates in India. Wow. So you have an example where you can operate and have a world-class sourcing if you just invest some more time, and the time is right now. You don't want to miss out investing in India right now. Few of the areas where still we need to work together is around the material ecosystem. Mm-hmm. That is one area where I think if you think about China in 1990, there are a lot of people who invested in creating that ecosystem. Whether you take China at some point, Vietnam, Indonesia, we need the same effort from the group of a few entrepreneurs to invest in India in terms of creating that ecosystem. We are playing a big part in creating that ecosystem as well. We are reaching out to the material suppliers, whether you take mesh, PU, synthetic leathers, all these companies, we are and chemical companies, asking them and helping them to move to India, and at a very low service cost. The whole idea is to create that ecosystem so that tier 1 factories who make our final products can thrive in India.
What's the conversation with that in particular? Because I think Vietnam's also doing this, Indonesia's doing this. So obviously we have vast material supply chains in China. They have a great expertise in it. But obviously they keep hearing from Indonesia and Vietnam and India, and it starts getting stacked. Surely they would start to move a lot quicker and be more agile and more willing than in the past to start to set up operations. I mean, we've seen a large influx into Vietnam. Obviously, the capacity's there, the quantity's up, but it seems like once you start to work that muscle and be very agile, it should be, I could be completely wrong, it should be easier for material supply chains to move a little bit faster than what we may think. What am I completely, what?
No, absolutely. I think you are spot on that. So what we advise material suppliers is not to put straight away a factory and think about investment and start an operation, because the tier one is still not yet there. So what we advise is, hey, how about we start consolidating, creating a warehouse, consolidate, learn about India, then get into some kind of assembling of product where you have still import raw materials from other countries and try to assemble that and then provide that service. And then finally, then you get into, when you're confident enough about India, or you reach a tipping point where you have enough volume to serve, then you can get into manufacturing. That's the path we are creating for them, because otherwise it is not possible. If we ask them to put up a factory tomorrow, I don't think there is enough there for them to sustain and support.
He sounds like a civil engineer, Matt. He sounds like a civil engineer to me. He's building society.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's kind of pivot away from that and talk about some of the irritants, Neeraj. So a lot of our companies are frustrated by the BIS standards that have been applied and the verification of foreign factories, and it's been a slow moving target for big global brands. One of our brands that we all know and love has mentioned that their inventory is going to run out pretty quickly because they can't get it in, and that impacts the Indian consumer. Prime Minister Modi was just here in town last week meeting with President Trump. There seems to be, they announced this desire to have an agreement of some sort. The U.S. government kicked out India out of GSP program the first Trump term, I think, to incentivize this dynamic. So there seems to be, there are these irritants out there, which there always are with trading relationships and global brands, but there's a commitment for some kind of deal. So as someone who lives in the U.S., is from India, has obviously a skin in the game on both sides of the equation, put on your geopolitical hat for me. What do you expect, or the possibilities that could come out of such an agreement, and how motivated do you think the Prime Minister is on his side, and how do you think that will impact the negotiations this year?
Absolutely. I think I would say the outcome of the meeting here of leaders in U.S. Has been very positive. You will see that there will be some kind of relaxation on BIS and verification of factories. There might be some space created where people can still operate as they were doing before. But having said that, I still will encourage factories to have plans in place of if you want to access the India market, have a plan in place to source locally. Keep that plan in place. I'm not saying go out and make factory right now, but have a plan in place. There are a few investments happening which we are engaged with. I think that is a right path forward. So you will see we will have some breathing space, but I am not too sure if India will completely give away BIS and rely on imports for domestic market. So there will be some relaxation, but I would say the policy will still be there. So my advice to brands and whether you're big brand or a small brand, have a plan in place of investing in India for local manufacturing and local sourcing.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, one of the things that's really struck me, I've said this on this program before, is, and to your point, Neeraj, is the investments flowing in. And there are some big retailers and big brands, we won't name them, but they are leaning on their vendors who Andy and I talk to regularly, that it's like, is India part of the consideration? Are you doing your due diligence about what we can do together in India? Because I think the writing's on the wall in China in particular. Andy mentioned kind of Vietnam and Indonesia. Vietnam is like it's tapped out at some point. Prices are high there too. And just India on paper is just this beauty, right? It's got such a young workforce. It's a growing population. You can't say that in China. You can't say that in the West. It's got a rising income. It has democratic institutions. It may not operate as quickly as we like them here in the States, but they're democratic nonetheless. A shared language.
We can blame the British for that.
We can blame the British for that for sure. We have that equal kind of blame.
That's right.
As two former colonies, right? But I think there's a lot of buzz on India in spite of the irritants, in spite of kind of the preconceived notions. And Andy's question at the start of it was brilliant. It's like, tell me why I should set aside my preconceived notions. And I think you've done a good job to answer that.
Maybe I can add one point here. But operating in India is still complex. It is not easy. Even if you're coming from, whether you're putting up a factory from Asia or West, it's a culturally very different country. Culturally different, language is different. So you need to make sure that you understand India and then understand India and then invest in India. So there is a different way India operates. I would say navigating through the complexities is key. So having acquired knowledge as much as possible, there's a learning curve there for operating in India. And we can help expedite all that learning. But if you want to learn on your own, I think just spend more time in India. I've seen a lot of companies fail as well in my last 10 years of focused on India. So I've seen a lot of companies fail as well, making some, I would say, foundational mistakes of operating in India. So that's a caution, yeah.
Well, I think too, and we'll start, I guess, on the environmental side from your background on at this pivot point. But I think for India too, I mean, water is such a precious commodity, and the way they treat it alone with their factories is completely different than somewhere in China. And human rights is fundamentally different than somewhere in China. And how people interact and socialize is fundamentally different. And we still have this in the U.S. where we talk about like returning domestic manufacturing to the U.S. from China. And there's still a mentality of recreating exactly what's in China, which doesn't work. And so the same idea of we've been in Southeast Asia, China, Vietnam for decades now. We're carrying that baggage of what we think it should be instead of what it could be. And not just with the labor, but with the technology of the engineering in India, could come up with some really interesting solutions around robotics and ways to cut out the processes to increase efficiencies in different ways. In ways and things that like India wants to invest in some of this stuff, right? Versus where China may not at this point. But your background in terms of running sustainability for Nike is fascinating because it's been one of the hottest topics for the past 5 years. It is a vague term in many ways. I think companies have gotten a lot better around defining it and trying to make steps forward. But it still remains this concept our industry hasn't fully adopted or gotten its hands around, but I think increasingly will because of the regulations from Europe, from the US that keep expanding. When you look at sustainability and some of the work that's happening and some of the work you're doing, what are some of the questions or challenges that you guys are trying to help solve for some of those smaller and medium-sized brands, for example, that you can bring to the table and help probably a lot of people in the industry who might want to reach out?
Absolutely. I think our SIV impact is totally designed for companies which are smaller and growing in US and very focused in US businesses and right now. So I did all the research before even starting SIV Impact and understood that the medium-sized US businesses are very underprepared when it comes to regulation or even basic foundational sustainability regulations or European regulations. So that's how we started. And there was a lack of sustainability as a service in US. So we said, let's, by default, companies go to big consulting company, which they cannot afford, and they don't get much. It's more of a consulting service. So we said, why don't we start a service? What the medium-sized companies need, let's do that. Let's focus on providing resources in terms of providing whether you need a fractional support or you need understanding of regulations, it is important. If you need that, we will provide that. If you need anything to do with around compliance in your supply chain, providing visibility in supply chain, so we go out and do that for you. You don't have to hire people and create an organization like bigger brands can do and do that. The other factor is why it is important for US, especially the medium-sized and growing companies, is hiring a sustainability resource is also expensive, is not available right now in US. So what we do is we bring this expertise of world-class expertise of group of people from Nike who have actually done the work. There are very few people globally who have done the work. So we bring this expertise who have actually done the work, who can go out and help you and actually go out and do that for you. So our focus is being a practitioner and not a consulting group. So that is a differentiation we are trying to bring. And if you see in terms of positioning of SIV Impact, it is at a cross-section of high digital capability and high practitioner approach. That's how we have taken. We have a lot of digital tools that we can help you enable unravel European regulation, help you with traceability, product life cycle assessment. We can help you with execute this as a project management piece of it. So we are all there to help and help US businesses thrive, especially companies which are smaller and growing. So that is why we started up. And the whole objective of SIV Impact is to help US businesses share.
Yeah, that's great, Neeraj, because I think we're in this weird environment where the regulatory train kind of marches on, but I think the kind of cultural conversation around sustainability has declined somewhat. So some of the brands see that, they see that signaling culturally, and they start to draw back and draw down on their personnel focused in on these issues internally, while the regulatory march continues, right? So like optically, it feels different. Technically and operationally, probably not. And so you guys are so well positioned to be that plug and play add-on to a strategy for companies big and small who either never started out with a sustainability team ever and can't afford it in the broad sense of a term, or they've downsized and are going to need that expertise anyway because the regulations will continue, particularly in the European market, which Andy does, a great job tracking kind of what's coming. We talk about our event in Portland every fall. That's not changing. And whether you have a sustainable personnel or not, you're going to have to address it. And I think you guys are filling that void for sure.
Absolutely.
What, I think it's interesting that you guys will make a map for someone, but also put the pins on the map, right? So I think that's very important because we have plenty of consultants that will tell you how to set a target, but there's not a whole lot of people who have the experience long-term to go out and actually execute against that.
Exactly.
And I think there's a balance to it too, in particular, because target setting for footwear is not the same as apparel. So you got a lot of people who are going out setting targets based on cotton or textile or t-shirts versus footwear. And if you set the wrong target by not having the wisdom to execute against it or having done that, you're setting yourself up to fail. And I think that's our I feel like a lot of companies have taken really good steps forward in sustainability. I think footwear doesn't get a lot of credit and doesn't maybe even know how to toot its horn too much, or maybe not want to because of greenwashing and et cetera. But we've made some really great strides, like in factories, for example, the energy efficiency that we've had. We've eliminated coal out of our factories for the most part. We've had really good progress. But I guess the next step, kind of what I see, and maybe is one side of the regulations. The fun thing, I think, is still there, and it's the innovation around the biomaterials and these new materials. And I'll get your take on that too, because sourcing for Nike, obviously, Nike. We talk about footwear, and there's Nike, and then there's the footwear industry, right? So Nike has this large amount of funds to do really interesting things and look at things and test things. But from what I've been seeing, these new biomaterials outperform traditional plastic-based materials in a new fundamental way that helps people build new value-added products while at the same time meeting those sustainability targets. And I think it's a really exciting thing. And we get really caught up on these regulation things we have to deal with, which are very important. My eyes roll in the back of my head sometimes trying to read all this stuff. But the other things on the bio and all these material things also make it really fun. And I just want to get your take on, helping people realize that is to reach those targets and goals, you're going to need some of this stuff, and it's not going away.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. If there are two things, one is regulation, one is innovation. I think what we see, there is absolutely interplay between that. If you think regulation just to comply, I think that may be not the right mindset. What we have experienced so far is see regulation as a part of it. It helps your business improve, be better. Think about if there are 65 European regulations overall today, and out of that, they only talk about two things: create visibility into your supply chain, create visibility into your product. Only two things. But think about if you do that, it really helps your business grow. Like think about the kind of information you have from a business on your supply chain, visibility on your product. It can make you understand your product business so well that you can be predictive how your business is going to perform next 2 to 3 years. That is the power of information that it creates. If you think about regulations, and there are so much exciting things happening around material innovation. It is not limited to footwear. If I'm in footwear brand, I will keep my ears and eye open at what's happening across the industry. So, for example, apparel. Even if you're not apparel, think about any other like car industry or any other industry, because everybody is leveraging material innovation to make their product better and more efficient. We need to have the same approach in footwear. Not only thinking of around footwear industry, go beyond and think about what's happening in other industries. Keep a tab on that. Leverage those relationships. Bring those innovation to your product. That's how I think we can, have a different trajectory for our footwear business in US and globally when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think BMW is buying bio in bulk. Like that's one thing I track is like BMW, and they'll go in and they'll be like, we'll just buy all this up. Like they're one of the leaders, and cool. Imagine like the luxury of a BMW, and there's still willingness to go in and buy those materials and be like, yeah, this is the future, and we want to be a part of this.
I was in Lululemon a weekend or two ago, and they now have the cactus leather bags that sell for just the same amount as a leather bag would. And Lululemon's premium, those premium brand everyone loves. They're getting into it too.
Yeah, interesting.
Absolutely.
Well, Neeraj, we appreciate you coming on today. Neeraj maybe you were at our sourcing summit last year. We're having another one this year in New York.
Yeah.
This year is going to be just as important as it was last year, because now we have a range of topics and issues as people start to move around the globe even faster. But he did a great job talking about Made in India at that event. He's joined us at the Portland events, and I think you'll see more of him at FTRA events, which is a great benefit to us to have another person come and bring perspective at these events that we have, and to help, on this podcast in particular. What the podcast is built for these conversations. It's more than a soundbite. We actually need to have conversations in our industry to learn, grow, and reshape what we're doing and think about things in a different way. So Neeraj, thank you so much for coming on today to share your perspectives.
Thank you so much. Like I said, it's a great platform for industries here in US businesses. And these conversations will really help make us better and others better. And thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. And if anybody wants to talk to Neeraj, just drop us a line, info@fura.org. We're happy to do an intro. If your company wants to dip its toe in India and start to actually learn and build that knowledge again and see what's happening, the hubs that are being built that you may not even know about, like happy to do that. Also equally happy if you're looking for a partner on sustainability to help you strategically map out what you should be doing and then have a team help you actually execute that. We're happy to introduce you to Neeraj and his team as well. And again, as always, thank you for listening to Shoe and Show. We're trying to bring, especially this year in 2025, different perspectives, because I think this year in particular, Matt, the business environment is going to be even more challenging, and we've got to be very scrappy about where we look at cost and opportunities more than ever. And I know, like, we did that in COVID, and people, went down to the bone and were like really looking, and now we got to scrape it again. So, as someone who enjoys steaks, I got no problem scraping the bone, make sure I get my full value. So I encourage folks in the industry to think of it that way. Nice ribeye in 2025.
Okay, sponsored by Morton's.
Well, our Ruth's Chris. That's all right. Ruth's Chris puts butter on the steak, so it's better for.
Not one, but two cholesterol meds.
That's right. It's better for your heart. Honestly, I mean, alternative reality. For whatever it is. So, I'm sure your brother won't listen to that. Matt's brother's a doctor. He's probably not very happy with that. I digress. Folks, again, thank you for listening to Shoe and Show. Next week, new episode drops. We appreciate you listening. Until next time, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.